You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another show lined up for y'all today. Maybe we have a special guest, Emily Gough. She has an amazing website that you can go explore. It's EmilyGoughCoaching.com. And man, today's show, we're going to keep it simple. It's all about coaching, of course, but a little bit about purpose and a little bit about Emily herself. So first and foremost, man, thank you for your time, Emily. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Shemaya.
Man, it's great to have you on. So, you're a founder of a respected top 200 Room to Grow podcast yourself. So you're not a stranger to this whole podcast world. Before we dive into just all the amazing stuff you do with your coaching, kind of give the audience a little better picture of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually in the corporate world for 11 years. And while I was doing that, and it was totally unrelated to anything that I do now, but I was also building up side hustles, doing fitness and holistic nutrition on the side. That's how I launched my coaching business originally, was doing holistic nutrition. And then I ended up feeling like I was not feeling particularly fulfilled by the work. I loved it, but it just wasn't lighting me up the same way that I had thought that it would. And I ended up transitioning initially into helping people share their stories, often via podcasting. And then that actually ended up transitioning more into human connection and relationships, because that's ultimately been at the root of everything that I've always done and how that has sort of come about. Throughout that, I ended a 9-year relationship. And when I found out that there had been 9 years of infidelity going on, when his other girlfriend came to the door to inform me, there was a secret house 170 meters from our driveway. That was a whole situation. So that was also what sort of catapulted me into shifting gears in a really significant way in my business, because I did not feel the sense of purpose from just the fitness and nutrition stuff that I did in doing this much deeper work, and that really was how things changed in a major way.
And man, that's a dark moment in itself. When you look back and you see those type of moments in your life, how have you used that as motivation to really just inspire others and help them as they go through their challenges as well?
I think that I have a friend who will ask a beautiful question that I borrow from him regularly. And he says, when was the moment that everything thought to be true was no longer true? And I think that we all have those moments at one point or another. I think that some of us will have multiple of those moments throughout our life. And my goal with the only thing that I knew I needed when I had healed enough to be able to talk publicly about my story. But I knew long before then that I would end up talking about it eventually, and not as any sort of revenge. There was no malicious intent behind it at all. It was that I felt as though the lies had been choking the life from me, the lies that I had been living with and not even realizing it for so long. And I had to be able to speak my truth. And I thought, if I come out with this and only one person benefits from it, I feel that I will have done my job, because I felt so alone going through that. And what's interesting is that when we go through these really dark moments, we can feel so isolated. And one of the best gifts that we can give to ourselves, or hopefully give to others, is to recognize our shared humanity. And the fact that whatever pain we're going through, someone else has gone through as well. Sure, there might be some details that are a little bit different and all of those things, but every human will feel pain. Every human will suffer. And it's more a matter of what we choose to do with it, and turning that into something deeper. It's not that everything happens for a reason. It's that we get the opportunity to create a reason, to create meaning and purpose from our pain. And that really has to be at the root of how we look at these experiences that we undergo, so that we can turn it into something else and turn it into the gold that becomes the entire foundation of everything that we grow into becoming, and allowing it to fuel us to keep going and to do something beautiful with something really dark and painful.
And those conversations are almost necessary to have. And I'm sure you experience those moments with your clients when they may not want to explore, or maybe they might try to like give you the demo version of the actual real version of the story. But how do you peel back those layers with your clients so that way not only do they feel comfortable being coached by you, but two, they kind of allow you inside an inside scoop of their life?
That's a really beautiful question, actually. I think that everyone connects differently. So there's never going to be, it's why I love working with people one-on-one, and I love doing groups and stuff as well. And I do group coaching too, but it's one of the reasons why I love connecting with people one-on-one so much, is because every human is such a unique spiritual being, like more unique than a fingerprint, that it gives the opportunity to get to go deeper with somebody than you might be able to go when there's a whole group of people and it's perhaps a little bit more one size fits all approach. So I think that there's so many aspects to this that we could get into in terms of how to connect, because these are the skills that I use with clients to help them feel safe enough to open up is the same thing that I teach my clients to use in their own relationships and with their relationship with themselves too. And the other thing is not pushing anyone to open if they don't want to open, because that closure that we all feel at one point or another is there for a reason. And it's part of the natural polarity of life is the opening and the closing, like the expansion and the contraction. We need both in order to recognize one from the other. So when we have a moment of closure, it might be because we don't feel safe to open up in that particular moment. It doesn't mean that we never will, but it just means that that's an opportunity to get curious and see what's coming up for us in that moment. And it's also about sort of like dipping our toe in the water a little bit too. If someone isn't used to sharing their story or is very uncomfortable, or maybe they've just never shared it before, that may come out all in one shot. They also might not feel okay to do that all in one shot. So it might be a layer at a time, and trust doesn't get built immediately. Trust gets built with patience, with integrity, with consistency, with time. That's ultimately required. So some people will feel safer opening up right away than others will. Others, it might take longer, and neither is a better or worse thing. It's just going to take time to develop. And that has to be how we look at all of our relationships, is that they won't happen instantaneously. Like the true, deep, like really meaningful connections, sometimes they're going to take a little bit more time than others. And that's okay. Like learning to be okay with that.
You listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Emily Gough. You go visit her website, emilygoughcoaching.com. And with communication, I mean, that's key. Self-awareness, communication, knowing where you are on the map so you can, plan for the next goal or the next phase of your life. How important is it for your clients to communicate their true feelings versus she don't need to know how I feel. I can just kind of fake it till I make it. How important is it to have that transparency?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Transparency is key. And it's funny you say, fake it till you make it, because I have a friend who has rearranged that phrase to make it instead, be it until you see it. And I resonate with that so much more, because so many of us can often feel the pressure of feeling like we need to fake it until we make it, because we maybe are struggling with confidence, or not feeling like struggling with imposter syndrome, feeling like, who am I to be doing this thing or in this room with these particular people or whatever it is. And instead it's about looking at either someone else who you maybe are using as a role model, but ideally looking at the person that you want to become, and starting to embody those traits and the values that version of you has, starting to embody that now. And when you embody it often enough and long enough, eventually you actually become the thing. that you have been trying to see more of within yourself. It becomes habitual, becomes ingrained in you. It's who you are at that point. So that's really important as well. The other thing too is with the communication and transparency piece, I can only help someone as much as they're willing to help themselves. And I don't do the work for anyone. I'm just a guide that helps people to go deeper into themselves. People do their own work. So when people, like thank me for how much they've helped, how much I've perhaps helped them or something like that, I'm so honored and I'm so grateful. And I love that I get to work with such amazing humans and just to get to do this work. It's incredible to me. It never ceases to amaze me. And I'm like, you need to turn that around, though. I'll say this to my clients, I'm like, you need to turn that around because I did not do this work for you. I can sit in front of you and like teach you all the things or whatever all day long, but like you are the one who has to do the work. You are the one who has done the work to get to where you are. And I think it's really important to recognize that every single one of us has everything that we need within us already. It's just a matter sometimes of bringing on certain people or undergoing certain experiences or changing our belief systems around something to get to the point where we uncover and recognize the tools that we do have within and utilize them. And transparency is key for that, particularly transparency with ourselves. And that requires a certain level of self-awareness that can be difficult because it's not easy to look ourselves in the mirror and to see the messy parts, to see the shadow parts that aren't pretty. They aren't what we want to see in ourselves, but we all have them. And the sooner we can start to begin to dance with those a little bit and to accept those parts of ourselves, of course, there are areas where we can improve upon, absolutely, but we have to have the awareness first. So we have to have the awareness and we have to like gain acceptance of those pieces and go, hey, maybe this is something that I need to work on. And this is like throwing up a flashing red light of something that I maybe need to work on. But we have to be transparent with ourselves about that before we can be transparent with anybody else.
And also with working on oneself, you got to learn your self-worth as well. And when you are establishing that part of the process, how do you, for the listener, do you understand that you're connecting with like-minded people that kind of emphasizes your self-worth and how you value your time and your presence?
Oh, I love that question because there's so many people who maybe don't feel that way. I think that one of the biggest tests with that to know if you were surrounded by like-minded people or not is to ask yourself, do I shrink or do I grow in this person's presence? And does my soul expand or do I contract in this person's presence? Those are really big indicators because I really believe that we want to surround ourselves with people who will light up when they see our name pop up on their phone and who will believe in us. And that is so important, like being surrounded by people who believe in us. And not everyone has that. And of course, we might have some people that it's not about cutting people out of our lives. I'm not really about that, but it's about perhaps putting up boundaries with people who aren't as supportive of us, because I just recognize so deeply the power that comes from having someone believe in you. And I also know how much it can crush someone when somebody doesn't believe in us. That can take that tiny little spark of hope, and rather than igniting it into a full-blown flame, it can snuff it out very quickly. And a lot of people are moving through the world feeling so disconnected from others. And I kind of just want to assure people that your people are out there and that they're looking for you as much as you are looking for them. So to not give up if you feel like you haven't found the right people yet. The yet is the really operative word there, because they do exist. They are there for you. And it's going to mean continuing to search for them, continuing to do your own work, all of those things, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, as cliche as that sounds. But it does make a difference, and you will be able to find them, and they do exist. But don't feel like you have to surround yourself with people who don't believe in you, because there are people out there who will believe in you, and that's really important.
Yeah, it's a matter of choice. You get to choose who takes your time and who doesn't take your time. And I feel like the more you reach new heights of success, you come to realize how valuable your time is. And if you're not where you want to be in life, you probably should ask yourself, where does my time go? And if you start to measure where your time goes, you can kind of lead those points together and see how they measure up as far as if you're making progress or not. And until you make progress, you probably won't value your time.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful point. The other part that I'll add to that is auditing your energy as well as your time, because we can't get our time back. Time, and I used to feel that time was our most valuable resource. Now I actually believe that energy is our most valuable resource and time is our second most valuable resource, because when we think about energy, if we are engaging with perhaps a client who leaves us feeling anxious and distressed for hours after the call, or a friend who leaves us drained and exhausted, or any of those things, it actually goes well beyond the actual time spent with them. Our energy continues to be drained long after the actual interaction has taken place. So we need to be really mindful of that and paying close attention to the people who light us up or the people who leave us feeling drained and exhausted. We need to notice these things. And again, it's not about cutting people off necessarily. I'm not about that, but we may need to set some heavy boundaries with people. And like you said, make some hard choices about how we're going to choose to spend both our time and our energy, and seeing how that shifts our life as a direct result.
We're talking to Emily Gough. You can check out her website, emilygoughcoaching.com. You do events, you do programs that people can be a part of outside of one-on-one. Is there any recent events that people can look forward to in the future if they ever decide to join a program?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a communication clinic, but it's upcoming on Monday. Like it's in a couple days. But I think that I will probably offer it on my website afterwards. I have a masterclass all about compassion. I have both a men's group and a women's group, and I've got other things that are going to be upcoming this year, later this year as well. So lots of exciting things to stay tuned for.
And looking back on your business, I try to ask this when I can with my guests, when I remember to. But when you reflect back on the things you built with your brand and your business, at one point it didn't exist until you took the first step. What's one or a thing that you're proud of most, reflecting back on what you've been able to build so far?
My podcast. Yeah, my podcast, Room to Grow, is definitely what I'm by far the most proud of. It has done exceptionally well, especially for having a very relatively small following on social media and stuff like that. But far more than that, the numbers aren't what's important to me in that regard at all. It's the messages that I get from people letting me know how a particular episode shifted something for them, or changed something for them, or made them feel less alone. How it gave them a fresh new perspective. And I've gotten to connect with so many incredible guests as well. It has just been really, really powerful. And it's been the main source of connection and relationship building in my business, and has allowed me to explore new edges of myself and of where I want to take my business, of my own voice. It's just been a very, very key piece to everything that I do. And I didn't think to myself years ago, I'm going to be a podcaster when I grow up. That wasn't even a thing like years ago, but it's really incredible to see how many people listen all over the world and stuff too. It never ceases to amaze me. And even though I'm very established at it, like for anyone who's just starting, I want to assure you, I'm well over 360 episodes in, and I've been interviewed on dozens of podcasts. I had another podcast before this one, so I've done like hundreds and hundreds of episodes at this point. And I still, every time I go to hit publish on an episode, I still have a little bit of moment of panic, like, oh, how is it? I don't know how this is going to go. Like a little bit of vulnerability hangover almost with certain episodes too. And that doesn't really go away. And I'm okay with that because it means that I'm still digging really deep into myself to come forward with the best work that I know how to produce at this particular moment in time. And I love that I have the gift of getting to do that. Like, how cool is it that we get to have this conversation and then have these platforms that we can release it on? I think it's very, very cool that we're living in this age where we get to have access to these incredible tools.
Yeah, I do that. I'm an introvert, so people think I'm lying.
Same.
It's like, nah, I'm just not as much as an introvert when I talk to people. It makes no sense, but only other introverts can understand that. But yeah, I know how that feels because to this day, I kind of do the same. I'd be like, man, what if someone doesn't like this? And then I just hit publish anyway. And I feel like that's the way we should have our attitude towards life. Like, stop being like, what if someone doesn't like me starting my own business, or if someone doesn't like me going back to school, be a doctor, or, publish my own book, or, go out and get some hamburgers, what if someone judges me for my food that I eat? I feel like we carry too much weight and credit to what we allow people to say is good for us or is, a good idea for us, instead of taking our own responsibility of living our own life, because it's our fingerprint. And if we try to live our life with other people's fingerprints, then no one knows who that person is. So
I love that comparison with the fingerprints. Yeah,
I feel like we lose our way because we're trying to please everybody, and we end up pleasing nobody because we become a counterfeit of what we really aren't. So I had to get off my chest today.
Oh, so true. So true. And I hope that this is encouragement for somebody listening who is like worried about starting and stuff. That's the number one deathbed regret, is people wishing that they had done the things that they wanted to do instead of doing what they thought everybody else wanted to do, and just like allowing themselves to be happy. That, people on their deathbeds, that is their number one regret. And we need to learn from that and to recognize that we have limited time here. And how do we want to spend it? And again, back to what you said about choice, right? Like we all have choices that we can make.
Yeah, because podcasts, going back to that real quick, it's like a sport. I mean, sports have been around for years, all right? And you never hear a fan say, I'm not going to the championship game. Nah, I mean, that's crazy. I think it's the same thing with podcasts or someone's career. Just because it's a podcast or just because it's your career, and like tens of thousands of other people are in that sport or in that podcast or in that career, does not mean that you're dull. Does not mean that the way you approach the game or approach the business is dull. It's cool and it's hip because you are the focal point of that platform. And I feel if people get too caught up in, it's oversaturated. Well, it's oversaturated because you said it was. And whatever you say, you're going to believe. And whatever you believe, you're going to follow. So if you follow the negative, then you're going to become the negative. If you follow the positive, well, then eventually you're going to become the positive, because you attract whatever you put out there with your mouth and your thoughts. So once again, I'm on my rant, but I just had to get that out too.
I totally agree. And because I used to teach people how to launch podcasts and how to grow them, I'm actually coming out of retirement briefly to hold two workshops about this. Like one on how to start your podcast completely in a 2-hour workshop and giving you everything that you need. And I'm doing a second one on how to grow your podcast in a 2-hour workshop, everything that you need. And one of the things that I teach because that's a common thing that I hear is like worry that it's oversaturated. I'm like, to give you some perspective, there's more than 50 million YouTube channels. There's only 3 million podcasts. And of those 3 million podcasts, it's just over 3 million as of today. Of those 3 million, I believe it's something like 80% of them. I don't quote me on that stat because I can't remember exactly, but something like 80% of them aren't active. So there's only like 20% of those over 3 million podcasts that are actively being produced. Do you want that, or do you want to compete with the 50 million YouTube channels? If you want to start a YouTube channel, go do it. Like I'm all for it, and you can still do that. But if we're strictly looking in terms of odds, I like the podcast odds. Like those look pretty good to me. So I don't want anybody to feel like it's too late. It's never too late. It's only too late if you decide it's too late.
And when you're yourself, you just beat all the other odds, because you never hear people say the earth is too populated. Like, come on now. Like,
exactly.
It's just one you. There's only one, Michael Jordan, one Steph Curry, one Scottie Pippen. I mean, there's only one of those individuals. So to have that mindset that you won't start something because you feel like you're not good enough, well, that's the main reason why you should start. I mean, if I would have had the attitude of a champion, 20 years ago, I'd probably be, on a skyscraper somewhere. But the point is, and it's with what you do with your coaching, by the way. Go to her website, EmilyGoughCoaching.com. You have to become you. And if you try to become anything else, it's just not going to work. It's like trying to charge the iPhone with an Android charger. It don't matter how hard you try. I mean, the outlet probably works. The phone might work, but the cord don't. So you got to have the right tools and resources to build what it is that you are trying to become. And until you do that, you're never going to attract the right people in your life, and you always are going to have this dark cloud around you because you are not using the right tools that are going to grow yourself. Because when you grow yourself, you now enable yourself to grow others. And when you grow others, it's just a full circle. I mean, I'm talking to celebrities like yourself, and it's like, I pinch myself sometimes, but at the other times, like, well, they're human beings too. Like, they did come from planet Jupiter or planet Mars, or they're on planet Earth, for crying out loud. And I feel like there's so many untapped potential for everybody who listen to this podcast, because it starts with you and what you are determined to do. And as long as you keep that focus, then everything else is going to fade. The only thing that doesn't fade is the choice that you make today.
So beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, sorry for my rants, man.
I love this. No, please. I'm much more about like having like conversations as opposed to like just straight interview or anything like that anyway.
Yeah, I don't do scripts. I try doing scripts, and scripts are great depending on like the person, because I understand some people do like a tour of shows, so they try to keep the same points. But having that real talk barbershop feel, and the reason why I say that, shout out to Rico Rodriguez, owner, back in 2017, he allowed me to go at his barbershop and do the very first podcast that birthed OmniFocus Radio. So big shout out to him. But I'm saying that because it's like organic, right? Advertising. Not that I'm a specialist, so don't take my word, for what it is, but just hypothetically, when you do advertising, the best advertisement is when people talk about you organically. Mm-hmm. It's not the fake, I bought these likes or I bought these whatever campaigns that makes it look like, I'm killing it, but in reality, it's just shallow. It's just a screen, So what I'm trying to get at is, the more you become organic in everything you do, the bigger the impact, the bigger the dream will be. I have a saying, I tell people, if you hold on to your dream will hold on to you. Mm. And people forget that the part of making your dreams reality is you holding on to your dream. Like if you let go of that dream, put it on the shelf, it's just going to collect dust. And before you know it, years go by and you never know what you could have been. You talk about regrets. You never know what you could have been because you kept putting that dream down. The problem is we don't like the work that goes with the construction of building our dreams. And someone told me on the show, you are the architect of your life. So until you start getting to work, and I'm not saying busy bee, but it's just common sense stuff. Until you start asking the smarter people the right questions, until you start hanging out with better friends, until you start being a friend and making new friends, you'll never grow to that next level. And I know I kind of took this over, but I'm saying that because you're a prime example. I'm interviewing you for your expertise because you took that shot. There might have been times you bricked it a couple of times, but you kept shooting, and now, boom, you're here. And you're everywhere else. That's the same thing for our listeners. Wherever they are trying to be, wherever you're trying to go, just choose to go. Too many times we sit down waiting for someone to grant wishes and make our life better, when we can just get off the bench and get in the game. So I'm sorry I kind of rant, but
I love this. I love this. It's so true. Like holding the vision and holding the energy of. So, for example, right now, Shemaiah, you and I are having conversation. We are generating energy right now where nothing existed before. And then we can use that energy to sustain us. So anytime anyone has like an uplifting moment of some kind, I challenge people in this sometimes. And this is something a mentor taught me, where we can kind of learn to hold that energy and to play a game with ourselves. Like, can I allow this to sustain me for 5 minutes? Can I allow it to sustain me for 5 days? And not in a toxic positivity kind of way. Like, we still need to feel the feels, and we're going to have a shitty day. We're going to have a shitty day, and that's okay. But can we feel into that energy? Because that is what is going to help sustain us on the days where it feels really hard to get back up and take the next shot. And no one is going to hold your vision for you. You have to hold your vision. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to continue to keep going and going and going? It's interesting when we look at some of the science around resilience, when we have even the anticipation or expectations can be very dangerous, but that's a conversation for a sidebar. When we have the anticipation or expectation of something happening, and we're like, ooh, like, it's almost here, like this thing is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. The disappointment from that actually plummets us like far below, our dopamine drops far below baseline. And that means that it's actually that much harder to keep getting back up. But everyone is more than capable of doing that. And if you need reminders of that, I want like anyone listening to look back in their own lives of the toughest moments that you have gotten through and realize that you have made it through 100% of your bad days. And you will continue to do so. You have that strength within you. Sometimes you're just going to have to dig deeper than what you've ever dug through before. But guess what? Where you're going is somewhere you've never gone before too. But you are believing in it before you see it. And that is what will get you there. You have to believe it before you can see it, instead of waiting to see it before you'll believe it. And allowing that to get you through, because there are all going to be those days where we need something to keep us going. Because like you said, no one's coming to save us. No one's coming. We have to do this for ourselves. And no one is ever going to believe in our visions as much as we do for ourselves. So sure, we can get like encouragement and have the right people around us and absolutely everything who can help us, but it still has to come down to us and like what we choose to do and the choices that we choose to make.
Once again, talking to Emily Gough here on Refocus Radio. Go to her website, emilygoughcoaching.com. Check out her podcast, Room to Grow. And last thing I'll say is, it's funny you said that, because I remember when I was little, I could not tie my shoes for anything. Imagine if I would have let that stop me.
Right?
It's a bad joke, but I'm just saying, like.
No, it's true. I've actually used that about like walking before. I was like, so when you were a baby and you tried walking, and it didn't work the first time and you fell on your face, did you just like sit there for the rest of your life? No, you got back up again.
Yeah. I think someone wise told me pain is for jokes and good laughs. If you can't make fun of the situation, then you're probably thinking too deeply about the situation. If you can't joke about it, I mean, I understand you can't joke about everything, but I'm just saying, some of the pain you can use as comedy hour. I mean, we've had plenty of those. I have so many funny stories how I failed. I mean, just real quick for the podcast. When I started that podcast back in the barbershop, I didn't know nothing about interviews. I didn't know anything about pushing the show. I didn't know anything about getting the equipment. I didn't know anything about anything. We had anything to do with podcasts. Zero, nothing, nada. But I did it for motivation because the guy that was the owner of the barbershop, he paid for breakfast every time we did a show on Thursday morning, and he paid it for our guests. Like, he brought food. I mean, it just exploded to all these different conversations, all these different people. People want to sponsor, people want to do this, da 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 da. It's like, wait, what? I didn't know how to do this at first. That's the same thing whatever you do in life. You know, you start your brand, you start your book, you start your business, you start, you're publishing your book, you going back to school, majoring whatever you major in. It's the same concept. At one point, you knew nothing. At one point, you was dumb as bricks. But if you pick up those bricks and you start building something with them, that's when the wisdom comes in. That's when you can say, okay, now I know how this works. Now I can explore how this next thing works. And it's like prerequisites with college. You can't take a course before you take the very one that you're supposed to be in. And I think that's life. You can't go to the next chapter until you close the current chapter. And until you can learn how to close chapters, you're always going to reread a page that you should have moved on from a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my TED Talk, unofficial.
I love it. It's true. We can't force timelines. I've had a very difficult time learning that lesson over and over again until it finally sank in that, like, we can't control timelines. It's not that everything happens for a reason, but sometimes there are certain lessons that we have to learn, or we also can sometimes just kind of be in awe at the way that the universe is bringing things together and different people, and like from all over to like make the pieces of our lives happen in to get us to achieving our vision, whatever it is. But there can be so many other pieces involved that have to fall into place first. We can't rush that as much as we would like to. It's not how it works. We have to move through the thing before we can get to the next thing. And like, there's an order to this, even when we don't like it.
I know I mentioned about purpose and all that in the beginning of the show, but by choice, I'm going to call this one Room to Grow, because I feel like that's what we're basically saying to the audience is, no matter what it is, you have to hear this from Emily, or you listen to this podcast. At the end of the day, you have to remember there's room to grow, because it's the moment that you turn off the light switch on your dreams when it's over. Now, if it breaks and you laugh because you're embarrassed it broke and you need to get it fixed, that's one thing. But my point is, if you quit on your dreams, you don't just quit on you. You quit on everybody else in this world who's depending on your dream to come true. I said this before, our pain is someone else's medicine. But if we quit, then the pain was for nothing. I think pain happens because it's an enabler of us to basically help others who are needing a resource to survive. I feel like whoever's listening to this, you're a survivor of a lot of things. You just don't give yourself enough credit. That's just lack of self-awareness and lack of self-care. The moment you start embracing who you really are, that's when you start looking at all these problems in your life and you use that as motivation to help as many people as possible. That's the true power that everyone has. And until they unlock that, they will always search for the negative, because misery loves company. You got to kick misery out the door and say no more. It's time to change the way you look at things, because until you look at it differently, you will not make different choices. So once again, we've been talking to Emily. I know I rant a little bit today, but it was kind of built in, a little built up energy. But what's the best way people can contact you and check out your business and your services?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you've done an excellent job at stating it for me, but Instagram is probably the best bet. I'm over at Emily Gough Coach. So Gough is Gough, or my website, Emily Gough Coaching, or the Room to Grow podcast is probably the ideal place to find me.
Well, once again, be listening on Refocus Radio, talking to Emily Gough. Go to her website, EmilyGoughCoaching.com. She's also on Facebook, and like she said, Instagram. You find her on LinkedIn and Pinterest. I want to say thank you again, taking time, schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.